Hi class, we made it to our last unit. I hope you're still well. I'm going to go over some of the two PowerPoints and what I'm expecting you to do. I know you've seen your group, and some of you are probably looking forward to this and some of you are not. And a lot of us have some baggage on group projects, honestly. Not every situation should require a group. In fact, if there is a simple answer to a problem, then group work just complicates things, because when you think about it, groups take a lot of initiative to schedule. So first off, we're going to look at the PowerPoint of how groups work, called small group roles, and think about a group project as the only reason that you'd work in a group, and the reason I went ahead and major groups, is because diversity matters. And if you don't get people who look at the world differently than you, then you might as well do the project yourself. And so your group should be between 3 and 12 people. A small group is 3 to 12 people who are working together for a common goal. And the goal here is to look at how we can help our communities cope in the current pandemic. So when we look at this problem, there are usually some roles that will emerge in the process of this. Now, I don't know how much this is going to happen on a virtual group, but I think these things will happen because generally we definitely have leadership evolve, and oftentimes the people who take the leadership roles in a group are those who care the most about their grade. So the person who monitors goal completion is called the task leader, and that person is where the buck stops. So if you decide that you're going to send out postcards to people, or send out emails to people who you think are lonely, and the task leader realizes that nobody has done anything, that person will get it done the night before it's due. Generally, that's not what a teacher wants in terms of a group project. We want people to work together, not just divide up the work and have 5 separate individual projects just all put together. It's more creative if you all decide to chip in and do one, like supply the energy and the creativity needed for one group solution. So there's also another leader that evolves, and often we call this person the mom of the group. It's called the relational leader, even though it doesn't have anything to do with gender. This person really cares about the well-being of the group members, and they want the group to be a pleasing event. They know that there's a lot of stuff going on in your life, and that is true. You know, you have a lot of classes, you may be working extra shifts, you may be having to watch your younger brothers and sisters, you may be having to share computers to get this project done. And this relational leader is curious and cares about all of that. And it's not just a task. This is not just about completing the task, that they would like for you to like each other and to have support through the group process, and to like each other when you're done. Now, the information provider is not something that is done just by one person. In fact, everyone in the group should be doing this third role. So if you have, sometimes we're like, man, I'm in a group of 4 people and there are 5 required roles. Well, there's going to be a whole lot of people who are going to be doubling up on carrying the torch for 2 kinds of roles, maybe 3 roles. The information provider is someone who has good skills. Maybe they have good research skills. Maybe they're well connected. Maybe they're just real creative people who are good at brainstorming for how we can do well on this project and make a difference on this project. You know, I'm hoping that this project gives you something to think about and be part of the solution. We hear a lot of negativity when we watch the news, don't we? I mean, you hardly know, how long this is going to last, and all the sadness, and who's going to be the next victim. And, some of us feel a little bit cooped up. I feel like the weather has really helped that. And I feel like kind of this, I don't know, it feels like people are loosening up the reins, even though we're wearing masks everywhere we go. But hopefully this project will be something that gives you hope and makes you feel good for the next week or so. That's my goal. So the central negative is a person that doesn't really, this is not always a popular role, but it's such an important role. And I found myself being this person on PTOs and things like that. And I didn't always feel good about it. But the central negative is one who causes you to rethink the position of the group. They are often the devil's advocate. Whether they feel this way or not, they will argue the other side. And it's a really important thing. I found myself sitting at a lot of meetings where we had raised a lot of money. And in some situations, we hadn't even spent the money yet, and they wanted to do another fundraiser. And I'd be the one to say, do we really need to go knock on our neighbors' doors and sell fruitcakes? Didn't we just do this with popcorn? And it wasn't always popular because there were people there who'd already decided that we were having another fundraiser. But I didn't want to leave that meeting feeling like I hadn't voiced my concerns. So the central negative is one who challenges the group's decision and usually comes up with a better solution because you've thought it out. Although it's easier to be around yes people, the central negative is a really important thing, and we're going to talk about what that helps you prevent really soon. The tension releaser is someone who realizes that this group experience should be fun. And this person does not necessarily cut up and take away from the mission of the group because that just gets annoying. But the tension releaser realizes that sometimes things are getting too hot and that we need to take a break. When you think about the word groupthink, this is why the central negative is so important. It sounds like groupthink would be a positive thing because it's like, oh man, we're finally gelling as a group. Technically, groupthink is a very negative thing, and it's a dangerous thing because it's when too many like-minded people get together and they don't really think through their solution. So groupthink is the tendency to rush to judgment and go in quick, dangerous directions just to get the job done. This is something that we don't want to happen with a vaccine. You know, we want there to be central negatives who make sure that things have been checked and rechecked and all that before we have humans, masses of people being given a vaccine. We want people to make sure that it is the right solution. So when you get together and you have people taking charge and telling which articles you're going to read, and then saying, hey, we need to do it by Wednesday night, those are how the roles are going to evolve. And all of this is going to take place on the discussion board. So I'll be able to monitor those who aren't participating. You don't need to email me and say, so-and-so's not doing anything. I'll be able to see that. That doesn't mean that you don't need to just plow ahead. We have about 9 days to get this group project done. So you need to be checking the discussion board every day for this to work. Okay, so what I'm asking you to do is use a 5-step process called the Dewey's Reflective Thinking Method. I'm asking you, and I've done some of it for you, and I want you to have listened to this before you open up the assignment. But the assignment is written in 5 steps. The first step is that I have stated in good question form the problem that I want you to tackle, and it's how should we help our communities cope in the current COVID pandemic shelter-in-place situation. And I've asked you to define a couple of terms, like what does it mean by community? You can take this as our Lewis and Clark community. You can take this as the Godfrey community, the Edwardsville community, the county, however you want to take it. You can define community in any way. You can also define the verb cope in any way. Is it just to get by? Is it to thrive? You get to decide what that word means. That you don't spend a whole lot of time on that, but do that first. And all of this discussion needs to happen Monday, Tuesday on the discussion board. You also need to choose an article to read very quickly. So I have given you 6 articles. There are some groups that only have 4 people. I'm only expecting you to read 1 article per person. So you read this article and you post a summary of the article on the discussion board. That is important for you to do right away because you cannot go to the 3rd step until everyone has their summary posted. If there are people who aren't performing, just go ahead. If it's Wednesday, I think that's the day we set for having the articles done. And if they haven't done it, then I would say you have to go for the third step. The third step is to brainstorm for possible solutions. Now, there's a whole lot more energy if we would have been able to do this in person, but hey, this is the best we can do. So this will be done on the discussion board. You could do this on a Zoom or Collaborate session. If you want me to set it up, just email me and I'd be happy to do that, because there is energy to having you sit down at the same time and do this. Brainstorming is to generate as many options as you can think of in a timed amount of time. So generally in a brainstorming session, there are some rules, and some of the rules are going to be taken care of because of Blackboard. You need to have typed it or write down all of the solutions generated. You need to give no verbal or nonverbal feedback. That'll be pretty easy if you're just typing on a board. And in the brainstorming step, there are no bad answers. So you could say that you want to have a Zoom session for everyone in your town. And you're like, that would never work because there's way too many people. But that you don't say those things in step 3. In step 3, you are just generating solutions for how we can cope and help our community cope during this pandemic. So take time. Maybe you want to set a deadline for that of Friday. I don't know what your schedule's like. Then you want to set some criteria. So after you have, let's say, 30 solutions up there on the table on the discussion board, you need to decide which solutions are good. One of the criteria, and criteria are just measuring sticks by which you're going to get rid of solutions that don't meet the criteria. And it's really like, I like to use the analogy of a colander, like when you're making pasta. So you have this whole pot of ideas and you pour them through this colander, and the criteria separate the water from the pasta. They let the bad ideas run out and they stop the good ideas. So one of the criteria that I've suggested is that this needs to not cost any money, and it needs to not jeopardize your safety. So you are not to get together. Your solution can't be to have a party, because that doesn't keep you safe during this pandemic. Okay, so you need to set another criterion at least to help you decide your solution. And then I'm asking you to so let's say that after you set your criteria, you have like 10 good ideas left. You can, at that point, either pick one that you want to do, and maybe it's to do an email campaign. Maybe it's to start a Facebook group. And then you actually do the solution. Now, remember, I've told you, you can ask me for help with Lewis and Clark. So if you want to have the library have some event, you can do that. If you want me to ask Jared to schedule a Zoom game night or something that you guys would run for Lewis and Clark students, I can do that. So you just need to reach out to me. And whatever you do needs to be done by 11:59 on Wednesday, May 13th. So that doesn't give you a ton of time, but I think it gives you enough time to do something to help our community cope. So I wish you the best of luck. I hope that we get some really cool ideas going, because I know that you're creative and compassionate people that want to make a difference during this crazy time we're enduring. I am around for questions. I will actually be meeting with some of my classes because of impromptu speeches. Not all my classes are meeting this week, but you can always email me if you want me to set up a Zoom session to answer any of your group's questions. I can do that. I want to talk you through this. If you have questions, I think the directions are pretty self-explanatory. Just know that you get creative before you get critical. And I'm just asking you to do something from the safety of your homes as a group to help our communities cope. Okay? So after you read these articles and figure out what some of the problems are, like loneliness and financial and technology, there's a whole lot of problems that are being brought out because of being at home. then you can be better equipped to decide what would be a good solution. Okay, I hope this lecture helps, and I miss you guys. I would really rather be doing this in person. So stay well, stay sane, and good luck on completing all of your classes. Reach out if you have a question. Bye.